What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins. Holy crap, people are downloading the hell out of this stuff. These last couple episodes, man, they've been bangers. So if you are just joining this awesome ride, thank you. Thanks for hanging. Check out the archives. I've got 90 some odd hours worth of free stuff for you to check out. So do that. It's awesome when people join on and then they email me. They're like, dude, I never knew this existed up until this episode. And I love to know the entry points. I always ask people on Twitter when they're like, oh, I got into your show here. And then, we start to have a conversation. And it's just awesome to hear. It's that community. It's that fun vibe, that energetic excitement of discovery. Anyways, the guest today is Mr. Ross Fararr. He is the vocalist for a hardcore punk band called Ceremony. And if you haven't heard Ceremony, put this podcast down. Go listen to them immediately. They are, in my opinion, a very, very, very good band. More on him in a minute. Let's get some fun house cleaning / business stuff out of the way. Propertyofzach.com, our awesome partners. You've heard me say it once. You've heard me say it twice. So how about 1,000th time? Or technically probably like a 70th time if you've been listening to almost every episode. Go visit their website. We'll be brought up to speed with everything that's happening in independent music, and we love them for that. Go review the show on iTunes. If you are feeling really generous, you can write some nice sentences about the way this show makes you feel. If it makes your heart swell and it makes you feel like this is the most important hour of your day or your week or whatever, then say that. Or if you're like, this is a complete waste of time, Ray, you should probably stop that. You should focus on other things in your life. Then that's fine. I'll take that feedback. It's nice to hear those honest things occasionally, as long as it's, not too harsh. So that's all I ask. Yeah, email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. I've been having some nice conversations as of late and people sending in some song suggestions. I think I've narrowed it down. Let me put it this way. Episode 100, it's a special one. Some stuff will be changing, and we've got a big guest. So, boom. That's called a tease in the biz. I wanted to talk about something, too. Recently, here in America, and most of the world, they pay attention to football. I could care less about it. I've never been a football dude, but we had the Super Bowl not too long ago. And the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Bruno Mars played the Super Bowl halftime show, which is it is the number one watched television program of all time with like 111 million people. I mean, it's ridiculous. Anyways, there's a big hullabaloo, maybe about 3 or 4 days after Red Hot Chili Peppers performed, where people were saying, hey, look, Flea, the bassist, isn't plugged in, and they're not actually really playing their instruments. That really bothers me. And not bothers me in the sense of like, oh, it sucks that the band isn't playing their instruments. Why the hell would they be playing their actual instruments at a halftime show? Like, do you think they're going to plug in and have a wireless system through their amplifiers? Like, it's not an all-ages venue. It's the goddamn Super Bowl. Stuff goes wrong. They're playing the backing tracks. They're performing their music as recorded. I don't know the short-sightedness of people that are so outraged about this. It honestly does bother me because it shows, for one, whoever's complaining about that doesn't have a lot of experience within either playing in bands, in sort of the music industry aspect of things. Two things which I hold dear in my life, and I've been fortunate that I've had a lot of experience with that, but who cares? They're playing this honestly, one of the most prestigious events in all of television as far as eyeballs are concerned and people paying attention to you. Because, there's people that clearly either have no idea who Bruno Mars and or Red Hot Chili Peppers are. So why would anybody, including the people that are producing the halftime show, risk the idea of a technical malfunction in regards to their instruments? It's ridiculous. So lay off, chill out. Bands that are on that level sometimes don't actually play their instruments when they're doing a special event like that. If you go to a Red Hot Chili Peppers show and they're not playing their instruments, that's a bummer. I get that. This is not a normal show, so chill the hell out. Had to get it off my chest. Anger, it's just seething. It wasn't really, but it's just, I'm like, come on, have some perspective, people. Anyways, Ross Fararr, Ceremony. Like I said, they're a great band. Ross, I've never known personally, never met him. They have existed in my life for quite some time. I've worked with the band professionally on a music festival that I put together, and they're always great, super professional, really on top of it from the business side of things. But then also they're just, you never know what you're going to get when you watch them play live. They're going to be energetic. They're going to be all over the place. You never know what songs they're going to play. You never know exactly what they're going to do. And obviously that's an awesome aspect of the band. Ross has always had this reputation, which I will hit in on the interview. He's kind of, for lack of a better term, like enigmatic, where it's like, oh man, like I don't know exactly what's up with that singer. I don't know. I heard he was in prison at one time, and like so many people talk. And so it was cool that Ross was not only willing to talk about that stuff with me, but then also just kind of, show who he is as a human being. Because I don't care how small or large of a music scene you exist in, there's something interesting about your life. People will start to talk about it. And, the game of telephone is played and it will get distorted to be like, oh, Ross murdered people, so he was in jail for like 7 years of his life, when in actuality, it's the complete opposite. I digress. Let's talk to Ross. I'll talk to you afterwards. Face to face. We've existed in the same rooms for many years, but yeah, I think one of the first times I saw you guys play, I think it was 2007. It had to have been, I think, the second Sound and Fury. It's where you guys did your Dead Kennedys cover. Because you used to do Holiday in Cambodia, right?
It was Uber Alice, California.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. But by that time, leading into it, obviously people had started to talk about you guys. But it was one of those things where watching you guys play, for lack of a better term, it was fun. Like what you guys were doing and like how everybody was just losing their minds. It was fun. And it's one of those things where it sounds stupid to like say that, like, oh wow, watching a band is fun, because that's what it should fucking be. But it just like that sense of like, my gosh, like this is unpredictable yet awesome, yet, somewhat dangerous but engaging, like all these things that obviously led to fun. And I presume that obviously that was the onset of the band, as far as like, hey, like we just like playing together and like to have fun with one another.
Yeah, of course. That's what it always comes down to,
Right.
You don't do it if it's not fun.
Right. Yeah, you would hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was really interesting to kind of watch that, and especially when you guys obviously, did, like I said, the Dead Kennedys cover. Certain covers that you do that, you're guaranteed to elicit a response from kids, but
yeah,
that cover obviously could teeter on the edge. There are kids who obviously would probably, maybe within the context of a hardcore scene, may have no idea who Dead Kennedys are just because they've never even messed with the punk stuff, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just awesome to watch that all transpire and have everybody be like, oh no, we know this song. This is good.
Yeah, I think that was right when Wild and Silence came out, and we did a long introduction in the dark with Craft.
Oh yeah.
I think that was right.
Yeah.
We did the Asylum introduction. I remember when the lights went on, it was just a pandemonium. I couldn't believe it. It was so crazy. Or no, scared people had just come out, I think. That's what it was. Yeah, it kind of took us all by surprise, because that's one of the more memorable moments where right when the music starts, it's just chaotic. You can't help but open your eyes and say, holy shit, this is out of control. Like, what has happened? What does my life come to with all these people just going psycho for what you're doing? It's pretty moving,
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially because I played in bands for years, and when you actually like kind of feel like you're having sort of an out of body experience, in the sense of like where you like exactly what you're describing, where it's like you walk out on stage and you're just like, holy shit, like where you actually recognize what's happening, as opposed to kind of just like not like in a negative context, but like going through the motions of like playing a show. But when you actually like notice what's happening, that's when you're just like, holy shit, like this is crazy.
For sure. It doesn't really happen too often. Because when you start playing a show, you're playing it and you're in your little zone and you're freaking out.
Right.
Like I said, coming out to that and seeing everyone go crazy. And it happened also this year at this hardcore, the same thing. I was like totally taken aback by what was happening for a second there.
Yeah.
But,
Right. You're like, here's me. I'm going to have to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
So you yourself, were you born and raised up in the Bay Area, or where'd you come from?
Yeah, I was born in San Francisco. Where were we living at the time? I think my family was living in Nevada. Maybe we were somewhere in San Rafael.
Okay.
But something was going on, and we were in San Francisco, I think. I was born on one of the Super Bowls, I think the 49ers were playing. It was the Super Bowl. 1984.
Uh-huh.
We were in San Francisco, so I was born in San Francisco, and I kind of was living in and out of Marin for a while, but not in like the hoity-toity part, but like right on the edge of Novato, like kind of on the outskirts of Novato.
Okay.
And then we moved to Rohnert Park when I was like 5, and I lived in Rohnert Park from 5 to like maybe about 20.
Okay.
Yeah, and then at 20, I moved to San Francisco, and I lived there for about 5 years. And then I lived in Oakland for about 6 months, and then I moved to Santa Rosa, and that's where I am now.
Nice. So, but yeah, you are tried and true of the Bay Area. You've been all over there.
Yeah. I love the Bay Area. I mean, I say I'll never leave it, but it's an amazing place. You know, the weather's perfect. You got all kinds of different climates. You get any kind of climate you want. You can go to the beach, and it's beautiful, and it can be foggy. Then you can go to the Sierras, and you can go to the cities. You can go to even a desert area if you'd like to, and it's just pretty cool out here.
Yeah, living in like the Orange County, Southern California area, it's the exact same experience where it's like, yeah, you can drive an hour and you can go to the desert or mountains or whatever. And it's like, I just always remember friends' bands touring out to California for like, the first or second time. Once they spend any time in California, they're just like, why the hell do I live where I live? Why can't I live here? Like, just because it is that, like, oh wow, the climate's great, like, oh there's sun, like, and then there's also there's just a bunch of nice things, and it's like, yeah, that's why we live here.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
So what was your what's your family structure like? Do you have brothers and sisters, and what were your parents doing at the time, like when obviously your formative years as they were raising you for a job?
Well, my mom had 2 kids before me with another man, so she had already done the child thing that started when she was 18. So.
Oh, okay.
I don't think she had me until she was like her 30s.
Okay.
So I was her last child, and yeah, I grew up with brothers and sisters, but they were much older than me. They were in their 20. They're about 15 to 20 years older than me.
Okay.
So that's kind of weird. Now my sister's turning I think 46 or 47 pretty soon here.
Right.
That's pretty trippy,
Well, yeah. But, there's such a wide age difference that essentially you probably felt like an only child in some respects.
Yeah, exactly. Because they were around, but at one point, they were out doing their own thing. So. Right. I essentially kind of grew up in Rohnert Park alone. It was my really early years. I had my brother and sister, but as I moved to Rohnert Park, I kind of didn't really have them around much. So, and my parents, they're still together. They've been married for like 30 years, and right now they're living in San Anselmo. It's a little tiny town in between San Rafael and Fairfax.
Oh, okay. What did your parents do for a job as you were coming up?
My mom didn't do anything. She was a mom. Sure. And my dad he's been a house painter for about 40 years. So.
Oh, a man that works with his hands.
Yes, sir.
It's funny because I've chipped on this topic a few times before, but I find it really interesting because I think people I'm 33 years old, and I think people of like our generation, I personally am not handy at all. And like, I mean, my father, didn't really care about that stuff either. But it's like, I feel like there's this whole generation of people that are, around our age that just don't have any skills from that perspective. And like, where's that going to go when obviously people, like your father and other people that, know how to do stuff around the house, and
yeah, for sure.
Where that's all going to lead us. Like, are we going to be calling on, 75-year-old handymen when we're a little bit older? It's like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more seldom that people are working with their hands,
Yeah.
And doing things analog, obviously. It's everything. A lot of things are becoming computerized, but I feel like there's always going to be some contingent of contractors or painters or plumbers. There has to be, I mean, I can't see how it could ever really change, of course, unless we're talking like singularity or something, where we get robots to start doing everything. But yeah, there's always going to be a small percentage of people that are doing that, and maybe carrying it on to their children.
Right.
I know how to paint, obviously, because I've kind of done that my whole life with my dad, just helping him out and doing odd jobs or whatever. But contracting is another one of those really important things. We got to build homes and we have to supply people with shelter. So it's like, Jesus, man, they got to keep being contractors, or else things aren't going to go right.
I mean, it's the quote unquote inflation-proof job where it's like, no matter what's happening with society, as far as like how we're structured, there are always going to be a need for people to fix stuff and people to build stuff. So
and people to consume stuff.
Yes, yeah. Which is
like, there's always going to be bartenders and there's always going to be eateries because that's what people love to do.
So did you actually enjoy that experience of like painting and learning that craft, so to speak?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's kind of a zen trade, because it's very meticulous, especially if you're cutting in a ceiling or cutting anything like a window or anything like that. It takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you gotta have good eyes, and I don't have good eyes.
Right.
That's what glasses are for, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You're able to work around that. So as you were growing up, how would you paint the picture of your the way that you dealt with your family and stuff like that? Was it one of those things, like, was it a contentious relationship?
Was that a pun? Was that a pun there I just heard? Or?
Yeah, actually, that was a completely unintentional.
How did you paint the picture of your?
That was totally just like completely out of my subconscious, but I appreciate
cool.
I appreciate you pointing it out though. But yes, how would you paint that picture of the way that you were raised? Did your I mean, obviously your parents are together, so they must be doing something right.
Yeah, it was good. I was just a little asshole. That's all.
Right.
I was always in trouble, and I've always kind of been a punk by nature, unfortunately. Unfortunately, because I put my parents through a lot of shit,
Right.
Yeah, I always haven't felt good around authority figures, or, I've never liked to be told what to do, obviously. And a lot of kids, they go through that complex, obviously, but still to this day, I can say that I'm not too happy in that setting in any circumstance. So.
Right.
I know how to deal with it a lot better, I think, though, because I've went through so much of that. So,
sure.
Now if a police officer stops me, I know how to handle it perfectly. I know what to do, what to say, and how to act, and I'm kind of thankful for that. But, I always have my eyes open no matter what, especially to that kind of thing.
And where can you trace it back to any specific event or anything, or is it just one of those things like you started, you from a young kid, you were always wary of that?
Yeah, it's just always been an instinctual thing, I think. I can't really say an exact place and time where it happened with authority. I was just never a good kid. I was always getting into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember once I was at a concert. My uncle was a God-fearing Christian. He took me to a concert once in Oakland at the Coliseum, and it was like a big Christian concert with my other cousins, because they were kind of trying to put me to the other side,
Sure.
Put fear of God in me and stuff. So
right.
I went with them to try out this concert, and after the concert was finished, they had all these pastors, and it's like like clergymen or whatever, walking around the crowd trying to give people pamphlets and taking people's names and phone numbers down. And I was standing next to my uncle, and when this guy asked me this, and I felt really weird, so I kind of gave him my phone number and my name. I think I was about like 12 or something at the time.
Okay.
And about a few days later, I started getting calls from all these churches that were close to me, trying to get me to sign up for their church or to start coming to their whatever they are.
Yeah, their service. Right.
And whether it was like, what was the thing for kids?
Youth group.
Yeah, youth service. There's another one.
Let's see, youth group. I don't know. That's the only one.
Something.
Oh, catechism.
Something like that. I think catechism was one of them.
Okay.
And I kept getting these calls for like a week, and finally, I felt weird about it because I felt like somebody was trying to, pull off my skin or something. So.
Right. Well, you felt. I'm sure. I mean, that sounds like. That's the way that you're describing that sounds exactly like obviously what the military does.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they get your. It's just weird because I've never heard of that experience like what you're talking about, and it's just interesting. So, anyways, you're getting these calls.
And it just made me feel uncomfortable right off the bat. So finally, one day I got another call, final call. My mom grabbed the phone from me and said, "Don't ever call her again," and hung up on the people. And I never got any more calls after that. So.
Wow. That's
And
crazy.
it was like the weight was lifted off my shoulder, you know. I was like, fuck, I don't have to talk to these people anymore. Fantastic.
For me, that's like that inspires such a weird feeling. Cause I mean, I had an experience with like a military call. It's like, you know, the guy would call every like 6 months to be like, hey man, I'm telling you, you should be interested in this. And me being like, I literally am never going to join the army. I am not interested. And he'd be like, I'll just call you in 6 months. Just give me 6 months. And it's like, dude, no.
It's so weird. It makes you feel so uncomfortable.
Right. I don't understand how that would actually like work. Like, are people so, I don't know, just like scared to say something and be like, no, I'm not interested in this. And like, you know, stop the hard sell, like stop talking to me.
Yeah. I think that might be a tact of it, is that people, you know, they don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, so they're having this conversation with,
mm-hmm.
or they're shy, or it's putting them in such a vulnerable place that they might give in to certain things, you know. So
yeah, they'll wear you down eventually. Yeah, that's weird.
There's all kinds of different psychological things, I'm sure, that they do that for, you know.
You, like you said, you always started causing trouble. Like, were you, you know, ever since in elementary school, were you being, you know, a little shit and doing, you know, pranks and that sort of stuff? Because
yeah.
And then it obviously continued to escalate throughout your, you know, junior high and high school career.
Yes, definitely. As
you started to, you know, matriculate and go to, you know, higher grades, besides obviously, like you said, a shit starter, you know, what sort of role did you find yourself playing? Were you that, you know, that weird punk dude in the corner, or did you identify with anything else as far as like, you know, in high school and stuff like that?
Like any kid, you go through the motions of adolescence, and you find different things, and you try to adapt different styles, or different things will inspire you. Then, you know, sometimes there are things that you're not very proud of, but you kind of go through a lot of stuff. And I think before I even got into punk rock, I was into hip hop.
Okay.
In junior high, I was like breakdancing a lot.
Oh, dude, did you you did the full on cardboard boxes and stuff?
Oh yeah. That was in the garage. We had it all, man. We were going for it.
Oh man.
And I think even before I got into punk, I got into hip hop, and then through hip hop I got into punk, I believe. So, and there was even a time, I think, where I was into like rock and roll, like, you know, it's maybe more into Led Zeppelin, and like even like things like Kiss or something. And then I was like, oh man, I don't know, there's got to be something else. And I heard, I started listening to a lot of the UK stuff, like Conflict and Chaos UK and all that, and then that segued into faster things like Minor Threat. When I heard Minor Threat, that's how I learned about hardcore. That's because I liked how fast it was. The fastness of that discography of all those songs that they made, especially the ones at the beginning, you know.
Right.
Those were what really pumped me up, and I think got me into hardcore music, was that.
Since you didn't have really older siblings to rely on for that, where was your, you know, who was doing the introduction stuff for you?
I think just friends from school.
Yeah.
You know, like just kids who I would meet being a badass.
Yeah.
Those badass kids listening to badass music, you know.
Right. You're like, my lifestyle determines my death style.
They're like, you want to fucking break this window? Yeah, listen to this first. Get you pumped up.
You basically, for all intent and purposes, you were hanging out with the other quote unquote mischief makers of like, hey, we're bored. We need to find something destructive to do.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it happened. Everything happens. For me, happened very. It wasn't linear at all, you know, because it was so separate. Like in '93, I first saw a Black Flag tape on the shelf of this skateboard shop in Santa Rosa called Concrete Jungle.
Okay.
And then, you know, I was skateboarding, and then, like, I just got into all kinds of different stuff at really random times. Like I said, breakdancing came to me when I was in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I rode a BMX bike at one point. I had rollerblades at one point, and that was a big part of my life. Like, I was into rollerblading. I was into doing yo-yos. I was, like, into all this weird shit all throughout my life.
Right.
Kind of sporadic, but
in the way that you're describing that, because I can empathize with what you're talking about as far as like when you kind of find something, you become obsessed with it, where it's like you're like, that's all I want to do. And so like that's how extreme your swings were, where it was like, okay, now I'm super in on every Duncan yo-yo possible. I got to do that.
Exactly. Of course. I mean, that's how your mind works when you're a kid, though, you know.
Right.
and it might even still go. That might follow, and it might even happen your whole life. Whatever, you get into stuff and you become momentarily obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Or maybe even for longer periods of time. But
And how are your parents reacting at this time to you being, obsessed about all these random different things? Were they just kind of like, well,
I can't even imagine. This must have been hell for them. They're like, what the hell? They're like, what's wrong with you? You're doing everything.
like,
you know?
how could we figure out how to corral this kid's interests?
Yeah, how could we just sit in a room with this kid and be so weird and crazy doing everything at once?
Would you have defined yourself as like antisocial, or is it one of those things where you're just kind of like, no, I just you stuck to your friends?
No, I just get along. I got along with pretty much everyone. I mean, I wasn't like a super popular kid, but I wasn't like, yeah, like you said, like I wasn't antisocial, or I wasn't like a kid in the corner or whatever. I mean, I was weird. I've never been the one to be like, alienating myself or anything like that.
Sure. Did you care about schoolwork and stuff like that? Did you have aspirations to be like, oh, I can't wait to go to college?
No way. I just said fuck schoolwork. I didn't do anything like that.
Right.
It was always hobbies or like, pursuing some other means of entertainment.
The escalating issues that you had as far as authority and just, causing mischief. What was the worst that it got? And then how did you, kind of, I guess, back yourself off from that to be like, okay, that's the limit. I shouldn't do that again.
No, it's never ended.
Really? Still?
Yeah, I'm still doing that. I'm always doing, things I shouldn't be doing. So
that's, but never any problem with the quote unquote, you get thrown in jail, anything from.
Oh
that?
Yeah, of course. There's all kinds of.
Like, what was the most serious charge that got brought upon you?
Probably grand theft, and I was put in jail for 40 days.
Oh, 40 days. Okay.
Not too long.
Longer for probably most normal people. I mean, quote unquote normal people.
Yeah, it was long enough. Let's just say that.
And how old were you when that happened?
I think I was 21. Okay.
Did that have a sobering impact, or was that just like, yo, let me just get through this?
Yeah, no, just get through it.
Right.
I mean, I don't do that charge or whatever that I got for. I stopped doing those things, but I've always just kind of been like, do what you do, live your life. But as you get older, you kind of learn how to, you just get better. You get better at being bad. You're more conscious of your surroundings.
Right.
And you learn how to deal with things like that.
Honestly, the way that you phrase it and the way that you put it is it's very true, because it's like the saying, there's a time and a place for everything, and all you're doing is taking all of your experiences of like, okay, here's how I got caught, and here's how it went wrong. Now, what can I do?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I mean, I've always been the kind of person who's like, I don't ever want to be controlled in any moment of my life, as far as just walking on this earth and being a living and breathing person. When it comes to like with things with the relationships or things, especially the relationships, whether it's people that you love or your friends or whatever, sometimes you have to give up and you have to do things and you have to, do the right thing. But
sure,
I think if you're out there in the world, you're always against the person who's trying to watch you closely or take you down, no matter what. You're always against. And I've just never been that person who say, oh, okay, well, I got a jaywalking ticket last week, so I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to press the button. I'm like, no, dude, I'm not going to let these people do that to me, because that's just kind of a way of inducing fear, and I just don't want to ever have that in my soul. You know what I mean? I just don't want it.
I totally identify with you, because like this is going to sound so trite and stupid. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like I'm 33 years old. Like I'm a fucking adult by all intent and purposes. Like I'm married, I've got a kid, like all the normal shit that people do. But like, I'm still involved in music. Like we're still involved in all this weird youth culture stuff. But at the same time, it's like, dude, when I go to airports and I'm like traveling, I always steal shit from convenience stores there. Like I take water, I take water, I take gum. The way that you describe it, as far as like, dude, fuck you for charging $4 for a goddamn water. I'm just gonna goddamn take it.
Yeah, of course.
You feel like you do take that ownership back of like, yo, you don't really got me.
There's a romantic quality to that, and being like, you don't want to be, it might even be a little bit more acceptable when you're 60 years old and you stick a candy bar in your pocket, to somehow never let go of that youthful, whatever, nostalgia or whatever, but always like kind of keeping it there, and like that's kind of a beautiful thing, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You helped me think of it in different terms, because like I've told a few people that, and they're like, "What do you do that?" And I'm always trying to I'm always trying to synthesize that, but I'm like, "Oh no, I get it. Yeah, yeah." So thank you.
Yeah, you're never going to be a square. That's a beautiful. It's a good thing to think of.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so obviously, as you were, you're starting to get more and more into independent music. Was it one of those things that became pretty clear pretty quickly that you wanted to like play in a band, or was it one of those things that was just a byproduct of the people you hung out with?
Yeah, it was just a byproduct. I didn't really ever think about it at all. And then one day hey, let's start a band, just like like you hear people do, totally nonchalantly. And yeah, we just decided to start a band. We started playing in the upstairs bedroom of the drummer's house, and one thing led to another. Played some shows. People really liked it.
Yeah.
Played more shows, and then we started getting people calling us saying, "Hey, come to Washington, come to LA, come here," and then just spreads quickly after that.
Right. So Ceremony was your first band?
No, my first band was a band called Hammer Time.
I don't know why I don't know why I blanked on that, but yeah, that's right. Okay, so.
And then Ceremonies quickly after that.
Okay, but Hammer Time is where you first kind of started to play shows and cut your teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
And I forget, you were singing for that, right?
Yeah, I was singing for that. Yeah.
And did you immediately feel comfortable with that role, or was it something you needed to learn to kind of become comfortable with?
Pretty immediate, I think. Pretty immediate.
Yeah.
Because I think another way for me to adapt that immediacy, because I was just playing in front of friends, it wasn't like I was playing in front of strangers or anything.
Sure.
It wasn't like we were playing at local bars. We were like at the community center. We were like all of our friends, like being kind of easy to break that entertainment. That there wasn't a separation between entertainer and audience, So I think that made it a lot easier. I think that's how kind of a lot easier for hardcore bands or punk bands or whatever to, maybe take on bigger crowds or what have you, and it just becomes kind of an easier thing, I think, for us.
Hey, that's true. Yeah. Because obviously you could
for some people, I don't know what I'm talking about really.
No. Well, I could see your point, because it's like you're able to kind of gradually ramp up, whereas opposed to, or certain bands, if they start with like, a business plan first and then everything else afterwards, their first show may be in front of like 500 people and they have no idea, like two of them are their friends, and they're immediately having to they have to be comfortable in front of that many people. And it's like, oh, like how could you? You're awful.
A lot of bands might start out just playing in front of strangers too, so that's got to be weird, I would think.
Yeah. And once you started to kind of taste the sort of, touring band lifestyle, was that like, again, you kind of put all your chips into that and you were like, I want to try to figure out a way to do this? Or were there other things that you were interested in exploring as far as like, oh, I'll get a job here? Or were you just like kind of painting with your dad in between tours and stuff like that?
Yeah, I did that sometimes, but it was mostly just always been a hobby, and I've never really taken it too seriously. I consider it an art project like anything else, but it's been a long-standing art project for me. It's writing lyrics and like touring and stuff. But it's not just my life. Solely my life is the band. Obviously, I have other things that I'm focused on, and I don't want to be. I mean, I don't want to say this, but I don't want. I don't know if I want to be a rock and roll guy for the rest of my life. I kind of want to do other stuff. So
sure,
some people will think that that's weird or whatever. Like, oh, you have this perfect job. You get to travel and you get to drink beer every second of your life, and groupies and shit. And you're kind of like, man, you just don't know what you're talking about.
Well, no,
it's not like that at all.
It's funny for obviously just only knowing you primarily through obviously the music you create and watching you play. You've always struck me as a person that has remained involved but detached, if that makes sense. Where it's like you're like,
yeah,
like where you're in it and you're doing it, but like you just said, your identity isn't solely, you're not Ross from Ceremony, even though you are, but you don't view yourself as such. Because a lot of people, like you said, the people that get kind of stuck, and it becomes difficult to transition to either different things that you're interested in your life, is when you put all of your identity in the one thing that you create, when there's other facets, and so it's cool to hear you say that, because that's definitely the impression just from an outsider's perspective of being like, oh, okay, I see. That is true.
Good. Yeah, I mean, you could never, like a person like Bob Dylan or Mick Jagger or whatever, that's who they are, that's what they put their life into, which might be, probably because they're making millions of dollars, but that's who they are regardless, no matter what.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's kind of different for me because I'm got other stuff going on, like I said.
Right. Yeah. What do you, speaking of other stuff going on, what are you focusing on currently? Cause you're at school right now, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my school stuff done. That's been hard because I've been touring for 10 years,
Sure.
There's a lot of gaps in my education and off time off, so I'm kind of just now finally finishing my junior college stuff before transferring hopefully to UC.
Oh, okay.
So I put my applications in November, and the 3 schools I'm trying to do are either Berkeley, Santa Cruz, or UC Davis.
Okay.
So we'll see.
What are you trying to pursue study wise?
And well, it's kind of different at each school because some of them have minors and some of them don't. But Berkeley would just be straight up English lit with probably like a liberal arts focus.
Okay.
And Santa Cruz would be more focused on writing, and Davis would be English with kind of more of a lit side, maybe like with critical theory mixed in with maybe a minor in design. So, and I've been doing design work for ceremony and for what have you for a long time. So I figured that's kind of the only school that really has that option. So it might be nice to go to Davis because they have the design thing going on.
No, that sounds cool. I mean, it's always refreshing to talk to people such as yourself that have that sort of, the foot firmly planted in quote unquote real life as far as like, I want to be productive outside the context of this band that people know me for.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're taking all the elements of what you've done with ceremony, but being able to distill that down to be, it's like, yeah, this is going to cross over to the real world too. Like,
yeah,
which is awesome.
In this day and age, there's not too many rock stars, you know what I memean?
Yeah.
And I think you have to be a little bit more grounded in that there's personal life and there's a fun life, but there's also, you have to figure out a way to, you have to have a means to make money. Unfortunately, you have to make money regardless. So,
yeah.
As much as I would love to rock my whole life, there's a tinge of reality there saying, Ross, you got to really make a substantial amount of money to live, to pay for your beautiful girlfriend and her needs and maybe her future needs and your future needs. So
the ceremony obviously kind of you guys hit the ground running, and a lot of people paid attention to what you guys did immediately. And the ascension as far as the level of popularity that you guys achieved in a relatively short period of time. I thought it was cool because it didn't seem like a lot of people, even though Ceremony was labeled a quote unquote hype band, whatever that means, by the popular culture hardcore kid or whatever, that seemed to wash away really quickly because it was obviously what you guys were doing was coming from a very sincere and real place. Like it didn't feel like there was any sort of, co-option of the culture or whatever. Was it one of those things that as you guys, as you started to notice the popularity rising pretty quickly, did you feel like you had to manage that at all? Or was it one of those things where you guys were just kind of like, we have to try to take this in stride? Or more so from your experience more than obviously the band as a whole, because you can obviously only speak for yourself, but how did you try to manage that as things were kind of getting big quickly?
Well, we all know, especially nowadays and the way things are going, that it's uncool to be cool,
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, I guess, kind of regulate that somehow. And I think you have to maintain that human level on a lot of the things you do, especially the way that you go about your band.
Right.
And you can't really a lot of that stuff you can't really stop. It's like a tidal wave. If you start being cool, you're going to be cool for a while. A lot of the way things work too now is that you're cool for a little bit and then you're uncool. And that has to do with time. And a lot of people, because things are so fast these days, they take in all this stuff really quickly. They digest it and they shit it out at the same time, because they're on to the next thing. They're on to the next cool band, on to the next band that everyone's talking about. It's like the news. People want to be up on it. As far as the way that we've always dealt with it is just, who cares?
Yeah.
You're a band and you're going to do what you do regardless. That's just kind of one of the detrimental sides of playing in a modern band, a postmodern band, a pomo band,
right.
Dealing with this internet stuff and all these things are going on at such an accelerating level. So I don't know. We just kind of go about our stuff the way we do.
Sure. Well, it makes sense too, because you guys definitely you guys hit obviously at the right time in regards to the fact that you weren't forced to make the decision immediately in regards to, you know, like, oh, dude, we have to have Twitter, we have to have Facebook, we have to have all these social media outlets, because you guys, you know, it was right. You guys obviously started right before that stuff, you know, took hold. So you didn't need to make that decision. You obviously made a decision later on where it's like, we don't need, you know, we don't need any of that. That's fine. Or if we do it, it's on a very, you know, merely information is being shared. That's all. You're lucky that you obviously didn't have to, you know, draw that line in the sand immediately where you had to figure that out.
Anthony put it in a really good way for a long time, and one of the reasons why we didn't do that is because we didn't want to kind of bog ourselves down. Like, we didn't want to have to do that stuff because it would take away from what we were focused on doing, which is making the music and just being a band.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't want to really pervert ourselves anymore. So we already had that thing. Oh, they're a hype band and they're you know, they're doing all this shit. It's like, I think a lot of those things are kind of meant to boost ego, and people look at how many followers you have and they base that on how popular your band is, which is unfortunate, but that's kind of the way things work these days. And there's a certain perversion to that, you know. We're kind of looking at it differently now because it's gone on for so long, and it is kind of one of these things that's a vehicle for actually people get to know your band, and that's essentially what people want. If you're an artist, you want people to hear your work. You want people to look at your work because your main intention is to move people in some way. So you want to move as many people as you want. But I think people kind of lose that idea, especially now with a lot of things are based on a number of 4,000 followers. You're the man.
Yeah. Since the clamor has, you know, the noise has died down to where it's like, okay, these things are obviously, like, as you stated, an important medium, and it's not.
Yeah, it's more of a communication thing, I think, now than it used to be.
Yeah, totally. And then you distinctly started to make the, you know, quote unquote transition from obviously playing just, when I say the word just, not in a bad way, but just hardcore shows, to obviously breaking yourself out of that particular scene and playing with bands, you know, even before you guys put out your last record, of, you know, bands that were of different genres and stuff like that. Was it one of those things that it was a distinct decision made because you obviously felt like it would keep the, I guess, creative energy flowing? Or was it one of those things that, like, we're just doing this because we're, you know, and not putting words in your mouth, but, you know, we're bored in playing these shows that we've been playing for the past, you know, 6 or 7 years?
No, it wasn't. It was more just. We didn't really talk about it or anything. It wasn't really planned. We just kind of started playing songs. Like, you could tell from Violence to Still He Moves You, it gets a little weirder, a little artsier.
Right.
And then from Still He Moves You to Run Apart, it gets, you know, things start to slow down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Start to focus more on, I don't know, maybe it's articulation. Like, you try to, the words you can hear a little more, the music you can groove to a little more, and then from that to Zoo obviously is another step. So it's kind of just a thing that happened naturally with us. We don't really plan it at all.
Sure. We
just started playing these songs, and it's really weird. I think about it all the time. Like, well, there's a lot of different ways you can look on it based on perspective. But, you know, there's the argument, obviously, of course, that we've gotten softer. Yeah, the music's definitely gotten softer. And even I think the subject matter sometimes is getting a little softer. But I think that's just natural progression of getting older sometimes. And that can be unfortunate because you want to keep that you know, that anger alive sometimes, or that youthful angst or whatever. But, you know, I stood, you know, I might start a band in the next couple of weeks. It's, you know, the fucking craziest thing anyone's ever heard. It's too so abrasive, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can make a choice to do that. I could make a band like that at any time because I know that music now. I know what it's like. I know what it sounds like. I know the aesthetic, and I can do that. But as far as my life goes right now, I'm doing this naturally. I'm slowing down. I'm almost 30. And that's the only thing I can say about it, you know?
You know, what you're saying completely matches up to the idea that it's like, yeah, I can express myself in this way that I have expressed myself over the course of the entire band, as far as just sonically. But there's an idea of, just because you're becoming more nuanced in the way you're presenting your music doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, you're less pissed or whatever. It's like you don't have to be on 11 the entire time in order to be heard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have to be on 11, man. You don't have to be on 11. You could be on 8 too. No biggie.
Something else I wanted to, peek in your head about was when you guys made the transition from Bridge 9 to Matador. A lot of people were like, "Whoa, like, dude, ceremony big time! Like, this is that's it." I mean, it makes sense as far as a logical sonic progression, but. And I'm sure, obviously, leading up to that point, a lot of different labels had been talking to you in regards to releasing your next stuff. So how was that whole courting process as far as, like, people who you would kind of never expect be interested in the band?
Yeah, that was weird.
How did you guys, obviously you guys navigated it, in my opinion, appropriately, but, do you have any specific instances where it was like, yo, that's weird they were talking to us, or that was a weird, experience from this label?
No, it's never been like that. It was like the same thing. It was always pretty natural. It wasn't like they pulled up in a white, double-decker stretch limo. Like, come on in, man. We're going to show you this other side of life. I think they showed up at like some show in Brooklyn at Kent, or maybe Johnson Street or something like that. And they were actually hanging out with one of my friends at the time, and I met through them, and we had some drinks, and we were just chatting. And then later on in the night, he's like, "Oh, he's from Matador." I was like, "Oh, wow, Matador." I started tripping out because it's obviously one of those labels. It's been around for 20 plus years, and
right,
all these great things came out of it, and there's a level of distinction there, and there's a level of, I don't want to say superiority, but
yeah,
well,
it's a different level
as far as taste goes, and it's just a different level, obviously. So that was kind of a trip, but it was never one of those things that was weird, like something that you would conjure in your mind about record labels, and like, oh yeah, come over here with us, like cigars, and it was pretty chill.
The way that they present themselves is definitely not that, It's not like they're going to come up to you and be like, "You guys want to talk about that Mogwai money? You guys want to make that Mogwai money?"
Yeah. Yeah, they're an independent record label still, so.
I'm sure you did have those experiences of not like the whole, like you said, jokingly with the stretch limo and stuff like that, but people that didn't really have a context for where you guys were coming from, but your name started to circulate as far as a cool hip band is concerned. Did you have any of those experiences?
Not that I can remember off the top of my head. Different kinds of people started showing up to our shows.
Right.
Like we would get maybe a little bit of an older crowd, or models.
Yeah. Jay-Z showing up.
We get like different looking people. And it wasn't just because when we were first starting, it was of course a lot of the younger crowd. But you kind of see it. You see it a little more in the people that show up to your shows to watch you. There's maybe it gets across to you, maybe like from a different intellectual perspective, people are looking at it in a certain way. So.
Sure. Two last things I wanted to hit on was the reputation preceded you personally, as far as like, "Oh, dude, if you go see Ceremony, the singer goes fucking crazy, dude. Like pulls his shirt over his head and like." So yeah, you have people expecting the idea of showmanship. Like, it's obviously the same problem that Damien from Fucked Up has. It's like anytime anybody does something on stage and it gets spoken about, you're expected to do it on either a nightly or tour basis or wataver.
Yeah, you're supposed to be radical.
Yeah, totally. So how's that sat in your head to be like, "Oh man, I just have you gone the complete opposite direction and just been like, here I am on a mic stand and that's all you're getting tonight because I'm just."
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I think it's just based on mood, how you feel.
Right.
I think a lot of it has to do with the crowd, because if the crowd's going crazy, you're going crazy. But if it's just a low key night, not too many people in the crowd, people are just chilling, drinking their beers, it's gonna reflect on you. Just as far as energy goes, So I tend to be a little more mellow and the crowd's mellow, but I tend to be a little crazier when the crowd's going wild.
Has anyone like actually come up to you and expressed their disappointment as far as like, "Oh man, you used to be so crazy. Like what happened?"
Yeah, that happens more in like I would say Europe. In Germany, they're very vocal about
everything,
their feelings and their interpretations about everything. So
yeah,
sometimes like I remember being there one year and someone come up to me and be like, "Oh, you're great, but last year you're a lot better. It wasn't too good this time." And you're like, "Oh, thanks, man. Wow." I don't really know how to take that, but I guess I'll take it.
Totally. Is that constructive criticism? I can't tell.
Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of weird. But
I think in America, people would have a much more difficult time trying to express themselves in a way, or even getting the courage to tell someone like you, be like, "Oh yeah, like I've seen you before, and you were much better." But like,
I mean, that's not, hey, that's not a bad thing. That's
no,
that'd be a good thing. That's kind of cool that they do that. So good for them.
yeah, totally. No, I think it's more so, it's just jarring when you hear it because you're just like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
I'm not
Well,
used."
it's so un-American.
Right.
It's so un-American. Like we have a tendency not to be able to interpret our feelings or tell people what we're feeling. And that's kind of a shame, I think, sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's kind of nice to hear that when you go into Europe or into those places where it's a lot more acceptable to be able to communicate with someone on a level of like, on an emotional basis or.
Yeah. The last thing I want to hit on was because there's an overarching element and theme in regards to not only obviously like your lyrics, but sonically as well, the idea of, unsatisfaction. Like it's a difficult thing to be satisfied with whatever level you're at, because there's this idea that obviously, especially if you're just breaking it down into a band perspective and you start, you're like, oh man, I just can't wait to record a demo. And then you record a demo and you're like, oh, I'm here. It doesn't feel like I'm like that was the end. And so like there's that idea of just always kind of climbing and, wanting more and that sort of idea.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Where you sit personally now, it's like, how do you yourself kind of, how does it sit in your head in regards to like managing that sort of idea of, not being satisfied and trying to figure out a way to, get to a place of where not like you can be set like fully quenched of that satisfaction, but of that idea that you can be like, okay, I'm on a good path. Like I feel like the process I'm doing makes sense.
I mean, I think unsatisfaction is just a constant thing in all of our lives, people in general. And I think also that it has its ups and downs. To be unsatisfied with something is going to make you keep trying, or you're going to keep going at things in a certain way. Like if I'm unsatisfied with the art that I don't want to say it's unsatisfaction. It's kind of more just you're moving all the time. There obviously there is a tinge of unsatisfaction in the things that you're doing because you want to make them better, right? You want to make them better, or you want to further yourself in that specific area or whatever, and that's important. I think people should always kind of be hesitant, or they should be looking at what they're doing all the time, or trying to make themselves better, or trying to make whatever it is they're doing better. That might not be unsatisfaction, but I think there is a little tiny bit of unsatisfaction in that. Like maybe there's productive unsatisfaction and there's just blatant unsatisfaction. Can lead to depression or whatever. But as far as me, I've always been unsatisfied with pretty much everything, and I think that's a little bit more humbling because you're always trying to work on yourself, or you work towards something. I don't think that anyone's ever going to be in a perfect place in their life. You're always going to have a little bit of unsatisfaction. So to be working towards a goal is super important, and that goal is to want to be a better person and artist or whatever it is that you do. I think striving for something is kind of maybe a better word to use in some terms, but you can't help but be unsatisfied in your life at certain moments. So,
have you personally battled with depression as far as that's concerned? Like, has that whole unsatisfaction thing kind of swallowed you up and put you in a bad place for a period of time?
Oh yeah, definitely. That comes in waves, though. Sometimes you're going through it, but sometimes you're happy too. I mean, that's the way it's been with everything in my life. Sometimes everything's going good, and sometimes things are going ridiculously terribly. And I think I have a friend who's an astrologer and a numerologist, excuse me, and he's told me things that are so near to my life. I'm like, wow, I can't believe that you're explaining it in that way. So totally right about some of the stuff he's coming at me with. And one of the things he said is that your life is just a total roller coaster at all times, at all moments of the day. And sometimes I wish it wasn't like that. Sometimes I wish it was a little bit more stable, but it's just totally out of control all the time. Up and down, up and down, up and down.
Because I'm not familiar with numerology at all. Can you explain it to me?
A lot of it has to do with numbers that reoccur in your life, whether it's your dates of birth, times of being born, just numbers that are closely involving your life, how old you are, or what, like I just said, different times and things. So. And there's different weird connections. I can't really go into it perfectly with you, but
yeah, no, that's fine.
Things will align with other things. And
interesting.
Obviously, you have to do with the solar system. And
yeah, do you yourself, because obviously the connection with your friend, do you put weight in that? as far as like an
Yeah,
overall.
I have Reese told me things are so personal and undeniably close to my actual state of mind. Because you a lot of these things that you hear with like horoscopes or whatever, they're kind of more lofty things.
Sure.
Like, oh, you tend to spend money.
Right.
You're like, what the fuck? You're like, yeah.
That applies.
Everyone does.
Yeah, that applies to every
It's too
aspect.
universal for it to have any kind of weight. But some of these things that he's told me are just so personal. It's like uncanny,
Right. So you're like, yo, I got to look into this.
But I'm not saying that makes it factual. I'm saying it's just like a story that you read. That, like if you read a short story that moves you, and there's something in there that moves you, you relate it to your life. Therefore, you make it a reality to yourself. So I've kind of made these things a reality in my life because, one, I think they're kind of interesting and cool, and two, I just want to believe it because, it's so close. It's so close to me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You feel like it's specifically tailored to you. So there's no reason that I would ignore this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a choice. I have a choice to like take certain things into consideration to make things a reality. So I do that. I don't care if someone thinks that they're stupid or whatever. But
Right. Yeah.
They're for my own. They're for myself. They're for me. So
no one else's opinion really matters on this. This is good for me. Yeah.
Like he told me, Ross, you were born on a full moon, and I'm thinking, oh yes, that's another really interesting thing that I think is weird and might, it's just something that I like to carry around with me in the back of my pocket. Oh, I was born on a full moon. What do you think about that? That's fantastic. Isn't it weird? Isn't it creepy? Isn't it kind of a little bit haunting in a way?
Right. Yeah, that's cool. You're just like, yo, I can pull this out whatever, and obviously I can explain crazy shit off by the fact that I was born on a full moon.
You can vibe off that, and you could segue to other stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. That sounds exciting and interesting at the same time. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you hanging out, and this was awesome for me. I hope you enjoyed it in some capacity as well.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Thank you, Ray.
So there's Ross. There is him in a nutshell. The thing that I really admire and like about him as a person and reflecting on that conversation is the fact that he has that holistic view of himself where it's like, okay, I am not just this person in this band. Like my identity doesn't solely reside on that. I use this as an artistic endeavor. I feel like it's an important component of my life, but I just find people that have that perspective to be not only either easier to get along with, just have a deeper understanding, in my opinion, of life and kind of where it sits, not only within themselves, but how they exist in the world around them. Because, you can get lost in being a person in entertainment, no matter what level. Because the moment that you think you're cool, that's when you've crossed the precipice of being not cool. There's some air of superiority, whether or not you actually express it in your own head. But if you're acting on it, it's just awful. But anyways, Ross clearly shows none of that. Tom Richfield is the editor. Visit propertyofzach.com. Until next week, be safe, everybody, and just be kind. That's all. I'll talk to you later. Bye.